Welcome, great men and women, to another episode of Breaking Down the Divide, presented to you by Divine Royalty Entertainment, where wisdom is wealth and wealth is wisdom. Brought to you by the Divided Nation Unity Campaign, where we focus on unity, ownership, and a global identity. And so we have with us today a powerful man, uh, and I'm not going to hesitate to say man of God, but also a man of wisdom uh, on this particular subject. Uh, Bishop Davis. Uh, and now I remember his African name, which is Kwame, right? Did I get it right?
Yes, sir, you did.
And so I was actually doing some investigation concerning um, the year of the return, and doing some investigation in connection with Divided Nation Unity Campaign and the entire book and movie and soundtrack. I ran across Bishop Davis, and he was doing a talk show, a morning talk show, and they just came back from Africa. And I was just, blown away by the information and insight that he had. And so I said, you know what? I have to uh, locate this man. I have to do that. And so I begin to do that. I begin to make some calls and trace and find out where he was. And I found out that he was actually an overseer of a church, a denomination. And I left my name and number, and I did not expect it, but he got back with me so quick. I was just so surprised. A man of his stature, knowing that he's busy, knowing he's doing a whole lot. Uh, I also found out, which we're going to talk about, he have a tours company that actually go back and forth to Africa. We're going to talk about that. So with that said, I was just impressed that he got back with me, and the conversation was like we knew each other for years. And I'm used to being the teacher. I'm used to being the scholar that is dropping the jewels and taught and teaching the people. But when he began to open his mouth and begin to expound on uh, divided nation in Africa and going back to Africa and how the Africa experience, I became the student immediately. I became the student immediately, and he began to give me even more insight and depth of the material that I wrote. And so, so I was like, wow, it was a powerful breath of fresh air, and I want you to help me welcome this great man, this great teacher, who is going to help us break down the divide today, uh, Bishop Davis. Bishop Davis, welcome.
Hey, Brother Brown. Thank you. Thank you
And
so much for having me.
I thank you for uh, family. We just connecting face to face. We talked on the phone a few times. We had a Zoom call on a personal note, but here we are in the studio, Dream Launch Studio, where Patrick O'Neill is doing his thing on the highest level, as I say. And I just thank you for taking our, receiving our invitation and allowing us to pick your brain on this subject. Pick your brain on this subject. So I don't know where to start. It's like for me, it's like Christmas. It's like Christmas. Even though I wrote Divided Nation, and yes, it's a part one, part two, part three. It's a soundtrack. It's a movie. I just a lot of stuff going on, and I bring the commercial side of this idea and this concept. But once I talked to you, I realized that there was an intellectual side. There's an intellectual side, and I believe I also bring the spiritual side, but I believe that you bring an even more spiritual side. And so, can you just introduce yourself in the way um, of how you begin to get involved with going back to Africa and just that whole journey as you share with me? Can you share with our audience?
Sure. Again, thank you, Brother Brown, for having me. And the Divided Nation Unity Campaign um, is uh, um, is a beacon of hope, and certainly it's a genesis of its type as we move towards the total liberation of the soul and spirit and bodies of Black and Brown people, more specifically descendants of slaves in this country.
Hmm.
Um, and so I really appreciate being here. I appreciate yourself being used as a tool to get this information out and to educate folks, give them the wisdom enough to be able to want to live another day, because it
Hmm.
is very, very difficult, especially in this age. And so we'll talk about the pathological issues that we experience, but your question specifically to me is, how did I get introduced to Africa?
Yeah.
And I'll say, first of all, I was born on the west side of Chicago in the 1960s.
Hmm.
And if we look at the murder rate of Chicago today,
Hmm.
which hovers between 600 and 680 people a year,
Hmm.
when I was growing up on the west side of Chicago, the murder rate in Chicago was 1,900 folks per year.
Wow.
It was a very bloody place to live. It was a
Hmm.
very violent place to live. And it wasn't like that when I was a small child,
Right.
but it turned into a war zone literally overnight from age 6 to maybe 8 or 9,
Wow.
with the redlining, with the introduction of illicit drugs into our community, with the removal of hope through lack of educational experiences, opportunities, as well as with the creation of the interstate highway system that divided our communities, this decimated our businesses.
Hmm.
So as I was growing up, I was different, and it's interesting that everybody gets recruited in the gang if you grow up on the west side of Chicago,
Right.
and I think that the problem with me as an 8 or 9 year old kid getting recruited into the vice lords was that I was more in tune with wanting to know more about the brother's life and his experience growing up rather
Wow.
than actually being a hoodlum on the street, right?
Wow.
And I ask questions as it relates to humanity. I ask questions about what does it mean for us to be in a place that's always victimized. We were all victimized by police, right?
Hmm.
Pulling us
Hmm.
over as kids. So my mind began to drift someplace else in order to maintain my own health as a kid. And
Right.
it drifted to Ghana, West Africa. I'd
Wow.
never been. No one had ever told me about it. Nobody, I just remember telling my classmates, that's where I want to go.
Hmm.
Everybody else was talking about what they wanted to do in life. I only talked about where I wanted to go
Wow.
in life.
Wow.
I'd already accepted my call at the age of 9 into the gospel ministry.
Yeah.
And I knew what I wanted to do, but I
Hmm.
knew also there's a place I need to go. And when, social media got popular some years ago,
Right.
I remember somebody reaching out for me
Hmm.
saying, is this the same Lance who in seventh grade always talked about Ghana, West Africa?
Wow.
And
Wow.
needless to say, I was probably in my 40s by that time. And I
Wow.
said, yes, who is this? um, yeah, I mean, that's all I talked about. And eventually, in my late 20s, I got a chance to go. And once I got there, I realized I wasn't a tourist, right? I'm on something much different than that. I'm
Okay.
on a life quest.
Mhm.
Um, I was always working for my father's business, even in school.
Okay.
So, so I entrepreneurially, I
Mhm.
understood Ghana um, from a historical context. I knew Ghana
Mhm.
from a spiritual state, which is what I needed. I needed to know the spirituality of Ghana in my first trip, traveling both to Ghana and Senegal in Gambia,
Mm-hmm.
that was when I realized that this was indeed my call.
That's
And
powerful.
so, yeah. So anyway, that's how after that first time of landing on the shores of the motherland, I knew I was supposed to be there. I knew I was supposed to engage in a deeper work from that
Wow.
point forward.
Wow. Wow. Now listen, don't stop on my account. I can listen to you all day, and I'm quite sure my audience feel the same identical way. So I remember you so how did you get involved? Remember you telling me is how you get involved with the ceremonial and the rituals and the different things like that
Hmm.
and yeah, how did that came about?
Well, okay, so so I've got my own spiritual practices,
Okay.
right?
Mhm.
In order to what I call de-westernize myself. So
Right.
every trip I've been to Ghana probably 55, 60 times. Had the experience and been blessed with a home there. Many friends who
Right.
are either homeless or work for the government there.
Okay. Okay.
Engaged in, so I developed a few businesses. So we'll talk about that in a minute.
Okay. Okay.
But when you talk about those spiritual practices, there's some
Mhm.
things that I did as a great great grandson of slaves
Right.
that I did intentionally to, like I say, de-westernize myself or wash myself
Mhm.
from an embedded mentality that the American system or the American experiment had infiltrated had impregnated me with this idea of self-destruction, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
A fatalistic approach towards life. And
Mhm.
so those are things that I intentionally wanted to wash myself of. Now, it's important to understand that when we look at Africa,
Mhm.
before before slavery was institutionalized, um, a good portion of sub-Saharan Africans were already Christians, right?
Mhm.
A good portion were already practicing Islam, and a
Mhm.
good portion were already practicing African spiritualism, as we call it.
Mhm.
Those religions were taken from the slave and then reintroduced to them,
Mhm.
especially in the Western context,
Mhm.
as what we know as Christianity, what we knew as the
Mhm.
way, right, as
Mhm.
following Jesus Christ. And so one of my treks was to identify the true worship, right? The worship that allows for me to not do it as a subject of white supremacy,
Right.
but to worship as a free being created
Powerful.
by God.
Powerful. Powerful.
And
And
it's,
and
mhm,
ironically, we are on picture 12 in picture 19. I'm 13. I'm sorry. Yeah. In picture 12 is the last night. Now, Raymond is having this affair. You read the book.
mhm.
Raymond having this affair with Nikki. Nikki, this is actually their last night, but they don't know it. And so there is a supernatural closure that's taking place amongst them and with them, and they don't know it. So they're in this hotel, and Nikki senses something is wrong. Something is being detached, right? And when you just brought this up about the washing, you know, I can see the sign and symbol in that room where Nikki and Raymond is about to detach themselves from an affair that they've been having, right, for years, right? And now Raymond is about to go to another level and discover himself and discover his destiny. And I see that this is taking place in our country right now. And I want you to get ready to expound on that based on your experience and based on what you know, that we sense that something is happening in the African American community. And with this affair that we had with the systemic racism or systemic racism in different systems, we we are feeling a pull or a detachment, but we can't put our finger on it. You know, the spiritual ones or the conscious ones can, and we know what's happening, but the unconscious one is like, what's going on? Why do I feel uncomfortable now in situations where I would normally be comfortable? And there was there was a closure taking place where we're saying we're no longer going to have an affair with systemic racism or whatever what other ills that we have got used to that paid the bills, right? That pacifies is something that's calling us higher and is pulling us to a destiny. And I believe that that you can explain that greater because you've been where that pull is coming from. What you
Yeah,
think?
that magnetic pull, right?
Right,
Just like, um, the gravitational divide. In
right,
space, there's this divide where the pull of the moon and the pull of the earth, they fight with each other.
right,
Once you get into the Earth's atmosphere, there's a pull, right?
right,
There's a,
right,
a magnetic pull.
right.
So there's two divisions that I'd like to talk about,
Okay,
and your book speaks to it in a two-dimensional way,
okay.
and it allows for us to open up the portals of our mind to kind of envision
Mm-hmm,
the same type of division, right? It's just
mm-hmm,
not the division of a nation, but it's the
mm-hmm,
division of ourselves.
mm-hmm,
It is the inward fight.
mm-hmm.
James Baldwin said, to be born in a free land and not be born free is to be born into a lie.
Wow.
Therefore, to play that out over the course of 50 or 60 years,
Mm-hmm,
that the only truth that most of us know was a lie from the very beginning.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Therefore, it is important to be divided from the lie that we've always embraced as the truth.
Absolutely,
That's the first. So,
absolutely.
so that lie then is the unrighteous affair, right? It's the
Mm-hmm,
wrong relationship that we see taking place within the book.
mm-hmm.
That there's a wrong relationship, but it's being righted because there is a pull out of that relationship
Right.
into another
What?
relationship.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And that relationship that we're being pulled out of first is to have a relationship with ourselves.
Wow.
That's what schizophrenia comes from.
Mm-hmm,
And at the African American is an individual who is engaged in a life of social schizophrenia.
mm-hmm.
We have to be something publicly, and yet we're something else inwardly.
Oh, that's right. Wow.
And that schizophrenic behavior actually, when unchecked, brings about a self destructive effect, or a self destructive gene, if you will.
Mm-hmm,
And so I find that once the pool comes, see, people say, I want to go to Africa because I want to discover my roots.
mm-hmm.
And I say, well, I would much rather you discover yourself, because until you discover yourself,
Right.
you're not going to discover anything about Africa.
Wow.
The only thing you'll find is that there are people who are beautiful just like you,
Mm-hmm,
that they own their own buildings, that they own their own land.
mm-hmm,
You'll find that they work side by side, no matter what religion you come from. We work
mm-hmm,
side by side in the
mm-hmm,
sweltering heat every day. We provide for our families.
mm-hmm,
More than likely, their children are going to go to school. If they can get education, they
mm-hmm,
will complete that education and then come to the United States and compete for jobs,
mm-hmm,
not jobs that we as African Americans are bound to get
mm-hmm.
because our educational systems have failed us.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
Their systems didn't fail them.
No. No.
Even in the midst of having nothing, their systems
That's
didn't
it.
fail them. As a matter
Wow.
of fact, America sucks their greatest minds out
Oh,
of them.
love
It's called
them.
the brain drain, right?
Wow.
Yeah, the
Brain
brain
drain.
drain is that they suck out the minds and the bodies of people out of West Africa who know English already, right?
Okay. Okay.
And at the same time, they've been highly educated. There are some bush areas where I was drilling boreholes in very remote communities that you couldn't get to other than if you had a an all-terrain vehicle. Most
Okay.
of the time, I just walked, and we walked with our equipment, me and
Mm-hmm.
my guys, to drill boreholes for these communities. And yet, I do remember us taking this was in 2006 maybe, And that was when it hit me how much more prepared academically these children are to our children, because my
Wow.
children were the same age as a group of children that as we were leaving in a big SUV out
Mhm.
of the marshy areas where we had just had a great celebration, we brought water to this particular village of about 3 or 4 thousand people who
Wow.
were getting sick at a rate of 30% every single week among the children because they're drinking water that was tainted with guinea worm. They were getting dysentery and other ailments from their water. And the
Mhm.
water that my company that we drilled for at that time brings fresh portable water. Folks, now the girls don't have to go and fetch water and carry it. The water is right there in the village. In the
Mhm.
village, and as we were leaving that celebration, this one particular evening, the sun had set, it was getting dark,
Mhm.
and there's nothing but bush all around us, just greenery
Yeah.
all the way up to the windows of the SUV. And we're just kind of slicing through it.
Mhm.
And a light caught my eye through the bushes.
Mhm.
And I told my friend, I said, hey, look, I need you to stop the vehicle.
Mhm.
We need to back up. He said, that's dangerous. We don't know what we'll run into. I said, just a little bit,
Mhm.
because I saw something.
Mhm.
And once we backed up a little bit, I looked through the bushes really hard and I had to get out of the car.
Mhm.
I got out and I broke through the weeds and I saw a group of small children, looked to be around 11, maybe 12,
Mhm.
studying geometry
Mm.
around a campfire.
Wow. Wow. Hungry.
No electricity in the village.
Hungry for knowledge.
Yes,
Wow.
geometry.
Wow.
And when I saw that, I realized that I had to go back home and then work with my own children, my own 4 children, even more,
That's right.
helping them to recognize it's not about competition.
That's
It's
right.
just about doing the business of life. We've
That's
got
right.
to prepare ourselves
That's right.
for a new and bright, vibrant future. And it has to fly in the face of what the American experiment has been trying to push up on us.
Right.
And that is that we are too helpless to help
Of
ourselves.
ourselves.
Yes.
Wow.
So,
Wow. Hey, and I appreciate that. Focus on ourselves is what we need to do before we try to get back to our roots, you said. And I like that. And that's really the undertone, if not the overtone of Divided Nation, is fixing that divide that is within us.
yes.
Fixing that divide. And we're not I'm not putting any more energy talking about the mainstream, what they're doing, what they're not doing.
Yes.
I'm going to put that energy on building us up, right? Teaching our kids, taking care of our women, and getting us ready to make that transition to Africa. So when we do go, we have something to offer. We have something to offer. It is wow. It's
Can,
yes.
real quick, Brother
Yeah.
Brown, I just want to say that that's why I really appreciated um, your penning the book, because you're bringing out something that folks have not really dealt with, and that
Mhm.
is we are quick to talk about the issues of a racially divided nation.
Mhm.
But if, in fact, we were truly liberated as the descendants of slaves, we would realize that we don't need to fight with anybody.
That's right.
We should own our own communities.
That's
We
right.
should build our own communities.
That's right.
We spend over a couple of, maybe even $3 trillion a year.
That's right.
There's nobody poor in the African
No.
diaspora here
No.
in America.
No one.
There are no poor descendants of
That's right.
slaves in this country.
That's right.
uh,
That's right.
we're given a social security number, right?
Mhm.
And we then, because of a lack of knowledge, a lack of mentorship, a lack of guidance,
Mhm.
and a lack of truth,
Mhm.
we then surrender our social security number that is tied to the core of this country,
Mhm.
citizenship in this country, that is
Mhm.
tied to the wealth that our ancestors brought to this country.
Mhm.
And we surrender that social security number over for government assistance.
Mhm.
We
Mhm.
surrender that social security number over for a number in a prison institution.
That's right. That's right.
And
That's right.
so what we do blindly is that we give over our birthright, like Esau,
Wow.
over to a country that is
Wow.
engaged in a system of keeping us thinking that we're a minority.
Wow. Wow. Powerful.
And
Powerful.
we look at minority. Well, we were forced to be that, right? I
Right.
mean, and there was some southern uh, count, counties, right, where the slaves outnumbered those who owned slaves.
Mm,
Um,
mm,
and of course, we were nothing but chattel. And
mm-hmm,
the introduction of the revolver, right, the gun,
mm-hmm,
was made only so that the slave masters could keep their slaves afraid and in check. That's
mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
the
mm-hmm.
only purpose of the code, right?
That's right.
The
That's right.
guns that we use to kill ourselves is the very instrument that slaveholders used to control us,
Told
even
us.
though we
That's
were
right.
in the majority.
That's right.
And think about it.
That's right. That's
Now, everything that we were subject and forced to do under this horrific system,
right. Mm-hmm,
um, we do willfully. The
mm-hmm,
guns were used to control us.
mm-hmm,
The cotton we picked and it worked our fingers, our ancestors' fingers to the bone. We're cotton, that's clothing. We're
mm-hmm.
addicted to clothing.
That's right.
Sweets, sugar cane is what we chop. We chop sugar cane down in a lot more in the Caribbean because we will spread throughout the entire, not just North America, but South America,
Mm-hmm,
um, and in the Caribbean. And so sugar, tobacco, right?
mm-hmm,
When I look
mm-hmm,
at Swisher Sweets packages
mm-hmm,
that litter our streets,
mm-hmm.
um, those are companies that were involved in the capturing and oppressing of black minds, and we're addicted to the very things
That's right
that
there.
enslaved us yesterday. Yeah.
Absolutely. And these are the chains that we have to get off of us. First,
Yes.
we got to get these chains off of us, and we have to stop putting it on each other. We continue to do that. We continue to do that, and so that's what divided nation is. It's really at its core what is about. We trying to remove the divide that's within us, so unity can do its thing. Because once we
Yes.
move the divide, unity going to do its thing. The nature of unity is going to do what? It's going to bring us together.
Your eyes will be opened.
Right.
One of the things that we do, we recognize that people don't have the tools and the resources to get washed up, if you will, to use that as a metaphor,
Mm-hmm.
before they go to Africa.
Mm-hmm.
So the first time that they get to Ghana, well, really right before they go, we have an orientation at our Sankofa location. The word Sankofa means to return to your roots and take possession of it,
Mm-hmm.
to enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
It's the image of a bird flying forward, looking back with a piece of fruit in its mouth.
Mm-hmm.
So we begin to, for a couple of hours prior to leaving, we prepare people from an orientation standpoint. After that, we know people have in Washington, they don't know what that means. And so we get to Ghana intentionally. In the first 48 hours, that's what we do.
Okay.
We undo what's been done.
Now I want you to kind of repeat that, but not yet. Um, how much time do we have with you? How much time do we have? Uh,
Oh, 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 Brother Brown, I told you whatever you need.
okay. So we're gonna do a part two of this. We're gonna take a 5 minute break, and we're gonna do a part two. And but let me ask you this question on the note, because right here on this segment, I mean, you just perfectly brought up the points that I wanted to bring up in this particular chapter, talking about the affair, and this is their last night, and they don't even know it's their last night. And I believe that we are in the last stage
Yes, sir.
in our country as African Americans, making the transition to understanding who we are as African Americans in connection with Africa. I believe that we are. I believe
Mhm,
the signs are here. We're looking for something. We're looking for something more. I can sense that. I can sense that people want to go to the next level, and they're hungry for that. One of the things that the Godfather gave to Raymond when the last time he met Raymond, and he was in the struggle of, you have to give up the vice presidency. He's running for vice president. Give up the vice presidency. And he said, okay, what would I get in return? He said, I can't tell you until you give that up. Okay.
mhm,
So now he's talking to Nikki about that, because he's been wrestling with that idea for a while, since the Godfathers told him this. So he asked Nikki, what would you do if someone asked you to give up everything for something you don't know exactly what it is? Can you, in your own way, uh, show us how African Americans is in that same situation?
Hmm. If you want me to dive into it right now, I will. If
How much
you
time
want
we
to
got?
take your break first, or
Okay, give me your 5 minute version.
all right. Um, um, the relationship between Raymond and Nikki is unhealthy.
Okay,
It's unhealthy.
right.
It speaks to, in the book, two dimensionally, it speaks to unhealth, gender unhealth.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We live in a country that has set at odds Black men and Black women.
Mm-hmm.
We are not together even in the raising of our children and even in the building up our community.
Right. Right.
That's not an accident. And it's not because men are all no good.
Right.
I don't believe my wife believes that about me, right?
Right. That's right.
I don't
That's right.
believe that the people who have given birth to us, you and me, believe that we are inherently no
No
good.
good. That's right.
That is a context that has been presented to the Black psyche by the various system,
Mm-hmm.
which we refer to as I refer to as the American experiment, but it's actually it's the eugenical program that America put out there that made us begin to fight with each other. The same system of thought manipulation was used to get us to abhor and dislike Africa.
Mm-hmm.
And we said, I don't have anything for Africa. I don't even like Africans. And when they come over here, they don't like us. Well,
Mm-hmm.
the missionaries in the 1800s taught them that it's not a good thing to ever intermingle with those who are slaves. And then
Wow.
that continued on to the 1940s and 1950s, when you began to see a great number of Africans come to the United States. They all moved to white neighborhoods because the missionaries had told them that inherently Black American people are violent, that they have a criminal nature, they've got a criminal gene, and
Wow.
keep your families away from them.
Wow. Wow.
So
Wow.
just like we have an unhealthy relationship with each other as men and women who
Mm-hmm.
are descendants of slaves,
Mm-hmm.
likewise, we have the same unnatural, same unhealthy relationship with the land, where we can prove through DNA that that's where we came
Came
from.
from. Wow.
And if you hate where you came from, then
Wow.
you can't help but hate yourself.
Wow. Powerful. 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 And so we have to give that. We have to give that up. We have to give that up. We have to give certain ideas and certain concepts up that causes us to hate ourselves.
Absolutely. Look, 100% of the time, I shared this with you, Brother Brown, since 2003.
Mm-hmm.
Every year, I've taken a group of African Americans to Ghana to experience the Sankofa experience. It gives us the strength and that second win to be
Mm-hmm.
able to come back here and realize, oh my God, I have given all of my rights up to people who are foreign.
Mm-hmm.
Those are whites as well. They've only been here since the 1920s. They
Mm-hmm.
tell you their grandfather came with
Mm-hmm.
nothing in his pocket. My
Mm-hmm.
grandma came and she
Mm-hmm.
only had $40.
Mm-hmm.
Well, how did they become wealthy? How did their children go to these schools? It's because we were told that we are nothing, even that we've had to operate as immigrants in
Mm-hmm.
the land that our foreparents came from, and so we've been here for 200-300 years. Some of us, right, we don't know it, we'd have to check out our DNA, but for the most part, it's nothing to have an African American whose DNA goes back 200 or 300 years in America,
Right.
and yet we're trying to purchase whatever people are selling us,
Right.
when we should be selling to this entire world as a
Wow.
people.
That's right. That's right.
That's why people bled and died.
That's right.
And so they believe that the offspring one day would be able to live as free beings,
Mm-hmm.
able to live out a paradise, this paradise of America. I'm going to continue to fight and I'll continue to work because I know that my descendants, they have faith that
Hmm.
their descendants would no longer have chains on them.
Wow.
And yet, American society and systems knew that that day was coming. And so they had us to willfully put chains on ourselves. And today, if we get washed in Ghana, West Africa,
Hmm.
right, through a Sankofa experience, we can actually come back and then realize, okay, is what was done to us.
Hmm.
This is how I used to view life.
Hmm.
But now there is nothing that I cannot
Right.
do.
That's right. And
Yeah.
I see that. I see that. And we're going to get into that a little more. So prepare yourself to teach us a little more about that whole experience. And and yes, we have to get ready to give up what we think is the best, that we was taught is the best, when actually the best is yet to come.
This is yet to come.
Yeah. So we're going to stop here, and we're going to continue this powerful conversation with our Bishop Davis and our brother Kwame. And he is, I mean, taking us on a total different level and giving us powerful insight. Our producers shaking his head, they like it. So I like it. And I know that the breaking down the divide audience is loving this. So we're going to come back to you just in a few moments. So take a break and do what you need to do. And we will be right back.